Your thoughts are not random. They are shaped by the words you use. And most men walk around with broken language, vague thoughts, emotional chaos, and no control over the voice in their head. But the man who sharpens his language sharpens his mind. And the man who commands his inner voice commands his life. This audiobook is for the man who's done being foggy, reactive, and confused. It's time to become precise, calm, dangerous, in the best way. Because the man who controls language controls his mind. Chapter 1. Words are weapons. The first tool a man must master is not his hands, but his tongue. They told you to train your body, to build muscle, to stay sharp, stay strong, stay alert. But no one told you the truth. The first weapon a man must master is language. Because before you ever throw a punch, before you ever take a step, before you build, lead, fight, or love, you speak. Not always out loud, but always within. The words you say to yourself, the labels you carry, the way you narrate your world. That's the code your mind runs on. And most men are walking around with a broken code. You don't outgrow the limits of your language. If you can't say it, you can't see it. And if you can't see it, you can't build it. A man who can't describe his pain will drown in it. A man who can't name his fear will be owned by it. A man who can't articulate his standard will lower it. Every time. Words shape awareness. They carve structure into chaos. Look around your life. Everything you've built or broken started with a sentence in your mind. I'm not good enough. This always happens to me. I can't change. This is just how I am. Those aren't thoughts. They're internal commands. Code. Scripts. Truths you've accepted without realizing. And you wonder why the same cycles repeat. You wonder why you feel stuck. You wonder why nothing you try ever really sticks. But the problem isn't effort, it's language. Your operating system is infected. Left. Your code. Words are weapons, always have been. Wars have started from a sentence. Empires have crumbled from a whisper. Men have killed and healed with their tongue. What you say carries weight, especially what you say to yourself. But most men never sharpen their speech. They speak like victims, like reactors, like weak men, and they wonder why their life reflects that weakness. Listen to yourself for a day. How often do you speak in vague generalizations? I guess, I hope, maybe someday. I feel like, kind of, just, honestly. These are not harmless phrases. They are verbal cancer. Each one chips away at your command. Each one confuses your path. Each one makes your voice weaker, and your mind even more lost. You want to command your life? Start with commanding your words. The voice you obey. You obey one voice more than any other. It's not your boss, not your father, not your coach, mentor, or partner. It's the voice in your own head. And here's the truth most men avoid. If you don't learn to own that voice, it will own you. Every day you speak thousands of words in your mind. You narrate everything, every failure, every success, every moment of silence. But that narration isn't random. It's built on patterns. Patterns of speech you learned or absorbed years ago. From your parents, from your environment, from the bullies who mocked you, from the woman who left you, from the culture that told you you're not enough. Those voices become your voice, unless you say, this story ends here. Sharpen the edge. The first step? Cut the noise. That means no more sloppy speech, no more filler, no more vague, emotional language that makes you feel instead of making you clear. You don't kind of feel tired. You're tired or you're not. You don't sort of think you should leave. You know or you don't. You don't just feel like a failure today. You believed a lie, and it's time to challenge it. Precision starts with editing. Discipline starts with deletion. Speak less, and make every word count. Not to sound tough, not to impress anyone, but to command your own mind. Because if you can't speak clearly to yourself, you will never live clearly for yourself. Masculine language isn't loud, it's grounded. The world is full of noise. Men yelling online, men oversharing their feelings to get attention, men trying to sound strong instead of be strong. But masculine language isn't loud. It's grounded. It doesn't perform. It builds. It doesn't shout. It lands. It's the man who says little, but everything he says means something. He doesn't waste words. He speaks with structure, restraint, and force. Because he knows, a man who leaks language leaks power. This isn't just mental. It's physical. When you say, "I can't handle this," your body tightens, your shoulders rise, your breath shortens. When you say, "This is pressure, not panic," your breath deepens, your body aligns, your eyes refocus. Language trains your nervous system. It shapes how you respond to threat, stress, and adversity. So the man who speaks with power doesn't just sound different, he feels different. He walks different. He becomes the anchor in the storm, not the man blown over by it. Build your vocabulary. Build your mind. Want more mental clarity? Expand your vocabulary, not to sound smart, but to think sharper. Most men are stuck with a 500-word vocabulary and wonder why they feel trapped in the same cycles. Here's the truth. If you only have 2 words for how you feel, good or bad, you'll never understand yourself. You'll never solve your patterns. You'll never build discipline that lasts. Learn new words. Read. Write. Speak precisely. Not because it's trendy, but because it's war. Your thoughts are your terrain. Your words are your weapons. And clarity is victory. Vephoros. Never fight with a dull blade. If you were going into battle tomorrow, would you carry a dull, chipped blade? Would you pick up a plastic toy sword? No. You'd sharpen steel. You'd prepare. You'd train. So why walk into the battlefield of life with a dull, broken, sloppy tongue? Your mind is a battlefield. Your relationships are a battlefield. Your decisions, your self-talk, your future, all of it, it lives and dies by your words. And a man who masters language didn't just win arguments, he wins himself. I will no longer speak like a man who has no control. I will use words that build, not break. I will speak like a man who's building something real, starting with himself. Because the first tool you must master is not your hands, not your fists, not your status, strength, or strategy. It's your tongue. Master your words, and you will master your world. Chapter 2. The voice in your head. If you can't command your inner voice, someone else already is. There's a voice in your mind. It speaks when you wake up. It speaks when you fail. It speaks when you're silent. And whether you realize it or not, you've been listening to it your entire life. But here's what most men never question. Whose voice is it, really? The voice in your head, that steady stream of commentary, labels, and emotion, wasn't born with you. It was installed by your father's tone, your mother's fears, the teacher who embarrassed you, the coach who dismissed you, the woman who broke you, the culture that programmed you. You absorbed their words, and now they echo in your mind as if they were your own. You're not enough. You'll always mess things up. You're too emotional. You're too cold. You're not built for more. None of that is you, but you've repeated it so many times. You started to believe it. The mind believes repetition, not truth. Understand this. Your brain doesn't believe what's true. It believes what's repeated. You could be capable, disciplined, resilient. But if your inner voice keeps whispering, left double quotation mark, you can't change. This is just who I am. Then your nervous system will obey that. Your body will follow that. Your decisions will bend to that. Because the voice in your head is your compass. And if the compass is broken, so is the path. You either command it or you're controlled by it. You don't get to be neutral here. The voice in your head is either a weapon you wield or a weapon used against you. There is no in between. If you don't write the script, someone else already has. If you don't speak back, you will speak in chains. If you don't challenge it, you will live by it. This voice doesn't just influence how you feel. It shapes who you are. Think about it. A man who constantly hears, "You're lazy, you always quit, you're not like other men," eventually becomes that. Not because it's true, but because identity grows from inner language. Speak like a victim, and you'll act like one. Speak like a weak man, and you'll shrink in every challenge. Speak like a man under pressure, and you'll perform under pressure. Your identity is not fixed, but your inner voice hardens it. And if you want to change your life, you must first change your language at the source. Listen before you rewrite. Before you edit your voice, you have to hear it clearly. Most men don't. They live inside a blur of emotional narration, half thoughts, resolved wounds, buried shame. So here's your task. Start noticing. Write it down if you have to. What do you say to yourself when you're tired, rejected, behind schedule, winning, failing, alone? This is your real voice, not the one you speak out loud, not the one you use around others, the one you whisper to yourself when no one's watching. And that is the voice that needs to be rebuilt. Clean the code. Once you see the patterns, you begin the rewrite, not with fake affirmations, not with empty positivity, but with clean, masculine, disciplined truth. Replace. I can't do this. With this is pressure. I can handle pressure. I knew I'd mess this up. With this is feedback. I adjust. I don't fold. Replace. I'm not like other men. With I'm not like other men. And that's why I win. You're not lying to yourself. You're reprogramming yourself. You're taking the wheel back. Not to feel better, but to be stronger. The voice sets your baseline under fire. When the pressure hits, when things collapse, when it's 2 a.m. and your mind wants to break, it's your inner voice that keeps you in check. The man who has mastered it says, "This is heavy, but not heavier than me. This hurts, but I stay rooted. This is chaos, but I stay clear." Because he trained his voice when things were quiet, so it would hold firm when things got loud. And that's what separates grounded men from reactive men. Not brute strength, not raw emotion, but control of the inner voice. Practice requires discipline. This isn't a one-time switch, it's a daily practice. Every hour, every choice, every storm. At first, it feels fake, it feels forced. It feels like you're arguing with yourself. But keep going. You're not faking it. You're fixing it. Each time you speak strength over fear, the voice shifts. Each time you cut a lie and insert clarity, the voice shifts. Each time you name the problem and don't run, the voice shifts.
That's how a man becomes mentally dangerous. Not loud, not arrogant, disciplined in his speech, even in silence.
Closing words. There's a man inside you right now. Quiet, calm, ruthlessly clear. But you can't hear him yet, because the noise is too loud. That voice that tells you to run, that voice that shames you, that voice that keeps you soft, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's time to take command. Control your voice, or it will control you. Chapter 3. Emotional chaos has a language. Every breakdown started with a sentence you believed. You didn't fall apart out of nowhere. You didn't collapse just because life got hard. The breakdown started long before you noticed. It started with words. Words you let slip through the cracks. Words you didn't challenge. Words you repeated until they became your reality. Emotions aren't random. They're reactions to language. Every feeling you've ever had came with a phrase. You felt rage because a thought said they disrespected you. You felt shame because a whisper said. You felt stuck because a belief said, there's no point in trying. The emotion wasn't the origin. The emotion was the response. But most men never slow down enough to notice. They just feel the wave and ride it into destruction. They lash out, they numb, they isolate, they spiral, and they wonder where it came from, as if it was some mystery. But it wasn't. It started with language, and it ends when you take that language back. Emotional chaos sounds like vagueness. Chaos is vague. It's murky, slippery, undefined. And that's what makes it dangerous. The man who says, I don't know what's wrong with me, has no clarity, no control, and no plan. The man who says, I'm overwhelmed, anxious, empty, without naming why, is at the mercy of his emotion. Because if you can't define it, you can't deal with it. Name it to neutralize it. Here's the first step to regaining control. Give it a name. If you feel angry, ask why. If you feel anxious, define what you're afraid will happen. If you feel numb, explore what you've been avoiding. Because the moment you speak it with precision, you shrink its power. Emotional chaos feeds on vagueness. It grows in silence, but it dies in clarity. I'm not just angry. I feel disrespected because I stayed silent again. I'm not just anxious. I'm afraid I won't be good enough. I'm not just lost. I never set a real target. This is what strong men do. They don't just feel. They interrogate the feeling. They sharpen it. They break it down until it loses its grip. Language is how you fight back. You can't fight emotion with more emotion. You fight it with language. Not loud words, not yelling, not venting. Structure, clarity, definition. When you say, I feel like I'm drowning, your mind obeys the image. When you say, I'm under pressure and I will adapt, your mind destabilizes. Same situation, different narration, different outcome. Because the words you choose shape the reality you live in. Most men speak from wounds, not truth. Listen to the way most men speak when they're emotional. I'm just broken. It's always like this. No one understands me. What's the point? These aren't truths. They're wounds, disguised as beliefs. And when you speak from your wounds, you reinforce your weakness. You replay the pain. You justify the spiral. You turn emotion into identity. But a man who rebuilds himself must learn this. Emotion is information, not identity. You can feel broken without becoming broken. You can feel anger without becoming rage. You can feel fear without becoming terrible, which you can't taste me too. But only if you learn to speak truth inside the storm. Build an emotional vocabulary. You were never taught to name emotions with clarity. You were told, man up, get over it, don't talk about it, let it out, no structure, just extremes. So when you hit emotional chaos, your only tools were explode, numb, shut down, or talk in circles. But there's a better way. You need words, not fluffy therapeutic buzzwords. Real, grounded, useful language. Instead of saying, I'm angry, say, I feel disrespected because I abandoned my own boundaries. Instead of saying, I'm depressed, say, I'm disconnected from purpose. My actions and values don't align. Instead of saying, I feel nothing, say, I've ignored myself for so long, I forgot what I value. This is clarity. This is power. This is what emotional leadership sounds like. Stay rooted while the storm blows. Emotional chaos doesn't just vanish. It tests you. There will be moments, dark, quiet, invisible moments where the storm starts to rise again. You'll feel the old spiral, you'll hear the old thoughts, and in that moment, you have a choice. Repeat the chaos, or rewrite the language. You can say, "This is too much. I can't handle this." Or you can say, "This is pressure. I stay calm. I stay in control." You can say, "No one will ever respect me." Or you can say, "Respect starts with how I carry myself, not what others get. It feels real." This isn't fake positivity. This is defensive structure. Language that anchors you when the winds pick up. Language that cuts through the fog. What you never say again. Some phrases need to die here, for good. Never say, "I'm just an emotional guy. I can't help it. It is what it is. This always happens to me. I guess I'm not built for peace." These are not observations. They're self-imposed chains. Burn them. Replace them. You are not emotionless, but you are not led by chaos either. You are not numb. You are in the process of becoming sharp. You are not weak. You are learning to name the enemy inside. And you do that with words. Control the narrative or lose the battle. At the core of every emotional spiral is a story, a narrative, a sequence, a sentence you accepted as truth. I was abandoned, so I'm unworthy. I failed, so I'm destined to fail again. I was betrayed, so I'll never trust again. But you are not the story, you are the storyteller. And a man who reclaims his mind begins here. That was the old script, but I speak differently now. I don't lie to myself. I define what I feel, and I use it. I don't drown.
I direct. Closing words. You want peace. You want control. You want emotional strength that doesn't collapse under pressure? Then speak clearly.
Speak like a man who's tired of spiraling, tired of false starts, tired of emotional chaos that hijacks his life. Because behind every breakdown was a sentence you believed. And from this point on, you don't believe everything you feel. You question it, you define it, you use it. Cut the noise, cut the fog, speak with clarity, lead with structure, because emotional chaos isn't mysterious, it has a language. And now, so do you. Chapter 4. Cut the sloppy speech. Vague words create vague lives. You want clarity, you want control, you want to stop drifting through life like a man with no compass. And the first thing you need to kill is sloppy speech. Not just what you say out loud, but what you whisper to yourself, what you repeat when no one's around, what you accept as just the way I talk. Because language isn't background noise, it's structure. And every time you speak with weakness, you reinforce it. Every word you use builds a system. Your brain is not chaos, it's a system. An engine, a machine built to follow commands. And the commands you feed it, your words, tell it how to think, how to feel, and how to act. When you speak with precision, your system tightens, aligns. When you speak in sloppy generalizations, your system leaks, leaking energy, leaking intention, leaking control. A vague man can't lead. A vague man can't build. A vague man can't conquer himself. Identify the leaks. Start listening to how you speak. Every sentence, every casual phrase, every filler. You'll hear it. The leaks. The passive tone. The soft, uncertain, apologetic language of a man who doesn't realize he's tearing down his own foundation. Phrases like, "I guess," "kind of," "just wanted to say," "honestly," "I feel like," "maybe," "sorry to bother." These aren't polite, they're corrosive. Each one signals weakness. Each one tells your system, "I'm not sure, I'm not grounded, I'm seeking permission." And you wonder why your thoughts feel unclear, why your goals keep shifting, why your actions never fully land. It's because your speech is bleeding uncertainty. Slippery language equals slippery mind. There's a direct connection between how you speak and how you think. You talk in half-thoughts. You live in half-truths. You say, I think I might need to start getting serious, instead of, starting now, I don't delay. You say, I feel like this always happens to me, instead of, I repeated a pattern that ends today. You say, I feel like this always happens to me, instead of, I need to sit with this and take control of my direction. One path leads to fog, the other to fire. You either sharpen your words, or your words will soften you. The brain obeys clarity. Your nervous system is listening. When you say, I'm overwhelmed, I can't think, I'm losing it, your body tightens, your breath shortens, your shoulders rise, your system obeys the language. But when you say, this is intense, I slow down, I stay grounded, your body realigns, your breathing steadies, your mind returns to center. This isn't just semantics. This is combat training with your own mind. Replace weak phrase with strong commands. Here's how a grounded man speaks. Instead of, I guess I should, say, I've decided. Instead of, I feel like I might, say, I will. Instead of, I'm sorry, I just think, say, here's where I stand. Instead of, maybe this won't work, say, if it doesn't work, I'll adjust. You're not performing, you're anchoring. This isn't about sounding strong, it's about being disciplined. There's a trap here. Some men hear this and start sounding strong, but nothing changes underneath. And they cut the soft words, but they don't change the intention behind them. That's noise. That's performance. That's another mask. This isn't about sounding cool or masculine. And this is about building discipline in speech, because disciplined speech creates a disciplined life. It's about cutting the extra words, not to look tough, but because they don't serve a purpose. It's about saying what you mean, and meaning what you say. Lean language equals sharp mind. The more direct your language, the clearer your thinking becomes. The stronger your decisions, the cleaner your action, the steadier your energy. Most men think their life is chaotic because of circumstances. But in truth, their speech is chaotic, and their life is just reflecting that inner disorder. Clean language equals clean decisions. Clean decisions equals clear direction. Clear direction equals quiet power. Begin the practice. Start with one day. Catch yourself every time you say, I guess, kind of. Just, honestly, I feel like, maybe. Sorry to bother. It's probably nothing, but replace them. Even if it feels strange, even if it sounds robotic, even if it takes effort. This is training. This is rewiring. This is the sharpening of a weapon that's been left dull for too long. Because once you speak with strength, even in small, private ways, you begin to live with strength. Closing words. Sloppy speech is not a style. It's not harmless. It's not humble. It's a signal. A signal that you haven't taken full command of your mind. But now, that changes. You cut the weak words. You delete the noise. You replace apology with presence. You replace maybe with movement. Because vague words create vague lives. And you weren't built to drift. You were built to decide, to lead, to build from silence. So speak like it. No fluff, no filler, no fog. Speak like a man who's done leaking power. Chapter 5. Language is identity. You speak what you believe, and become what you speak. Who are you? Most men answer that question without thinking. I'm just a regular guy. I'm a mess. I'm trying to get it together. I'm not like those other men. They speak from habit, from pain, from a script that was never theirs to begin with. But here's the truth. The man you become is shaped by the words you use to describe yourself. You're not just speaking, you're coding. Every time you describe yourself, you write code into your nervous system. I'm lazy. I'm always anxious. I've got anger issues. I'm not disciplined. I've never been confident. You're not just venting. You're not being honest. You're programming. And if you keep calling yourself weak, don't act surprised when weakness shows up in your decisions. If you keep saying you're broken, don't expect strength to emerge when the pressure hits. You don't rise above the language you use. You become it. The danger of false humility. There's a trap in this. The world teaches men to speak small, to stay humble, to not sound full of themselves. So what do? They downplay everything. I'm trying. I'm figuring it out. I'm not perfect, but I guess I'm doing okay. It sounds noble, but it's poison. Because humility is not the same as self-erasure. You can be grounded without gutting your own identity. You can be self-aware without talking like a man with no spine. Stop calling yourself weak and expecting strength to appear. The inner narrative becomes the outer reality. You say, I'm always sabotaging myself. Soon enough, you do. You say, I'm the type who always overthinks. You become the type who delays, doubts, and drowns in thought. You say, I've never been consistent, and that language gives you permission to stop trying. What sounds like honesty is often just permission to stay small. But there's another path. You can speak a new script. You can write a new identity. One word at a time. Start where you stand. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about rebuilding yourself with language that aligns you, not weakens you. Instead of, I'm a mess right now, say, I'm rebuilding. From the ground up, and I'm not hiding from it. Instead of, I've always been this way, say, I'm training my focus, every hour, every decision. Instead of, I've always been this way. This one builds differently. This is what power sounds like. Not ego, not fantasy. Alignment, because a man who speaks like a builder becomes one. Your identity is fluid if your language is disciplined. You are not fixed. Your name, your past, your patterns, they may shape you, but they do not own you. What owns you is the language you keep repeating. Most men want to change, but they keep speaking like nothing ever will. They walk around saying, I'm stuck. I can't change. It's too late for me. This is just who I am. And then they wonder why everything stays the same. Your identity isn't found. It's forged. And you forge it in your silence, by the words you say when no one's listening. Stop hiding behind realism. Here's a lie strong men often fall for. I'm just being realistic. No, you're not. You're being rehearsed. You're repeating the same tired lines you've always used because you're afraid to speak differently. But realism, without direction, is just resignation. You're not being grounded. You're being passive. If you were truly grounded, you'd say, here's the reality, but I'm not staying here. Here's what's hard, and here's how I'll grow from it. Here's what I used to be, but here's who I'm becoming. That's not fantasy. That's clarity with fire behind it. Speak who you're becoming. Want to break the cycle? Then stop describing yourself only as you are, and start speaking who you are becoming. Not with fake confidence, not with performative positivity, but with the quiet strength of a man who knows what he's building. I'm becoming calm under pressure. I'm the kind of man who follows through. I build alone. I don't explain. I speak with clarity. I live by standards. Speak these words daily, not out loud, for others, but silently, intentionally, for yourself, because the identity you speak becomes the man you wake up as. Closing words. A man's identity is not written in stone, it's written in speech. Not the noise he makes around others, but the script he repeats in silence. Every day, you speak yourself into existence. Every word is a building block or a wrecking ball. So stop saying you're broken. Stop saying you're lost. Stop calling yourself soft, inconsistent, hopeless, addicted. Stop telling the story you don't want to live in anymore. Instead, Speak like the man who's sharpening. Speak like the man who's rebuilding. Speak like the man who doesn't shout, but builds in silence. Because you speak what you believe, and become what you speak.
I knew the truth. I knew that I knew you.
Chapter 6. Silence. The most precise language, sometimes the strongest words, are none. You've been taught to speak up, to defend yourself, to respond, explain, prove, react. But there comes a time in a man's life when he realizes words aren't always power. Sometimes power is what you don't say. Sometimes power is in the silence. The world is loud, but the strongest men aren't. Look around. Everyone's talking, everyone's arguing, everyone's trying to sound strong while looking weak. They talk over each other, they tweet their pain, they overshare to get validation, they perform instead of build. But you're not here for that. You're not here to impress. You're here to become grounded. And grounded men don't need to explain themselves every time they feel something. Grounded men don't react to every challenge. Grounded men know silence is not weakness, it's control. Silence is restraint, not cowardice. Weak men fear silence. They interpret it as rejection, as awkward, as failure to stand up for yourself. But real strength looks different. It holds, it waits, it lets the noise pass. A man who uses silence wisely understands this. Just because you can speak didn't mean you should. You don't need to respond to every insult. You don't need to explain your standards to people who don't live by them. You do. You don't need to argue with chaos. You just exit the room. Not to avoid, but to preserve energy. Because silence isn't passive. It's precise. Silence trained your mind before language did. Before you spoke your first word, you learned in silence. You observed, you studied, you endured, you adapted. That's where real strength begins, not in sound, but in stillness. But most men forget this. They fill every gap with distraction, with noise, with overtalking, with over-explaining. Why? Because stillness reveals what you've been avoiding. Silence forces the truth to surface. And some men can't handle that truth. But the man who can, that's the man who becomes dangerous in the best way. Silence is a strategy. When you learn to wield silence, you become a different kind of man. Not passive. That's the man who becomes dangerous in the best way. Silence is a strategy. You speak only when necessary. And when you do, your words carry weight. Because they're not thrown around recklessly. They're placed with intention. You wait. You listen. You let others burn themselves out with emotion, noise, and weak logic. And, well, we can. And then, when the time comes, you speak. Not to impress, but to clarify, to cut through, to lead. The strongest voices are built in silence. You want to speak with power? Then stop performing. Stop needing to be heard all the time. Powerful speech comes from a man who has been quiet long enough to understand himself. A man who's confronted his fears in silence. A man who's trained his thoughts in silence. A man who's rebuilt his standards in silence. He doesn't shout. He doesn't brand. He doesn't announce everything he's working on. Because he knows, if you speak everything you're doing, you're building for attention, not for strength. Silence cuts the fat from your words. When you start using silence as a tool, you start deleting the extra. You stop saying, honestly, to be fair, I just feel like I don't know. But you cut the nervous words, the emotional leaks, the verbal clutter. You say what's essential and nothing more. You speak like a builder, not a performer. You speak like a man who carries weight, not one who tries to borrow it. Silence is a form of dominance when used correctly. In negotiation, silence makes people nervous. In conflict, silence makes people reveal themselves. In leadership, silence makes people listen when you do speak. Why? Because silence is unnatural to the weak. It exposes their need for validation. It makes them fill the gap and show their hand. But for the man who's trained himself, silence is a position of strength. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't react. He lets the noise collapse under its own weight. And when he does speak, it cuts like a blade. Learn when to speak and when to shut up. This is where discipline shows up. Because silence isn't about shutting down. It's not about becoming cold or distant. It's about knowing what's worth saying and what's better left unsaid. Every time you speak, when you should have stayed quiet, you leak power. You betray yourself. You let impulse lead. But when you hold the line, when you breathe instead of react, when you pause instead of ramble, you own yourself. And that's the first step toward owning your life. Practice silence with intention. Here's how to sharpen your silence. Wait 5 seconds before responding in conflict. Let your emotion cool. Let your clarity rise. Don't announce your next move. Let your progress speak without narration. Remove filler words. Cut words like just, maybe, I think, and speak with clean force. Practice being alone, without music, without input. If you can't be alone in silence, you don't fully know yourself. Journal in silence. Sit with it. Learn from it. Let the stillness sharpen your thoughts before you speak. Most men think power is found in what they say, but a grounded man knows. Power is found in what you don't say. When you stop explaining your every move, you become unshakable. When you stop reacting to every push, you become dangerous. Because you're disciplined, and when you use silence as your edge, you start speaking with surgical precision. Chapter 7. Control the frame. There's a silent war happening every day. In every conversation, every negotiation, every moment of tension. It's not about shouting. It's not about who's right. It's about who controls the frame. And if you don't understand what that means, you've already lost. What is the frame? The frame is the invisible structure behind the moment. It's not just what's said. It's how it's said. It's why it's said. It's what's assumed to be true before anything even begins. You've felt it before. When someone walks into a room and suddenly the entire atmosphere changes. They don't talk louder, they don't demand attention, but they own the context. They set the rules without saying them. That's frame control. And most men are completely blind to it. Most men react inside someone else's frame. Here's the brutal truth. If you don't build the frame, you'll live inside someone else's. Think about it. Someone criticizes you. You start explaining. Someone insults you. You get defensive. Someone questions your choices. You begin justifying them. Someone makes a subtle jab, and suddenly you feel smaller, weaker, uncertain. What happened? You didn't respond with strength. You reacted inside their frame. You accepted their terms. You played their game. And that's how men lose power, quietly. Not through failure, but through unspoken agreement with weakness. The frame is built with language. The frame isn't magic. It's not energy. It's not some abstract mindset trick. It's language. He who defines the terms controls the outcome. The man who says, "Let me explain myself," is already losing. The man who says, "Here's what I expect, here's what I allow, here's what I will not accept," controls the frame. Same room, same moment, different outcome. Because one man leads with language, the other reacts with weakness. Power is not just spoken, it's assumed. Men with presence don't announce it. They don't say they don't take disrespect. They speak in a way that assumes authority without ever needing to sell it. That's the secret. Frame isn't forced. It's assumed. You don't beg for respect. You carry yourself in a way that assumes it, and anything less feels unnatural. And that begins with your words. How you introduce yourself, how you correct people, how you respond to conflict, how you navigate silence. Every sentence is a signal. Am I setting the terms here, or am I submitting to someone else's? How frame gets stolen. There are subtle tactics people use to steal the frame from you, and most men fall for them. Backhanded compliments. Wow, you're really serious about this stuff, huh? Undermining questions. Do you really think that'll work, though? Tilt. Language. I just think it's selfish of you to focus on yourself like this. Assumption traps. We all know you're not really the committed type. Each of these is a linguistic tactic to shift the frame, to place you beneath them, to make you the one who explains, defends, or backs down. But a grounded man doesn't fall for it. He doesn't fight the bait. He resets the frame with calm, precise language. You're projecting. You can think what you want. I've already decided. I don't explain myself to people who don't live by the same standards. If that's what you believe, I won't argue. But I move how I move. No emotion, no defense, just a hard reset. Mental framing. What you call it shapes what it is. Frame control isn't just outward, it's internal. What you call a situation determines how you experience it. If you call it failure, your system shuts down. If you call it feedback, your system learns. If you call it rejection, your energy drops. If you call it redirection, your energy sharpens. Words shapes the meaning. Meaning shapes momentum. So frame your life with precision. This isn't punishment. This is preparation. This isn't chaos. This is pressure, and pressure builds me. This isn't falling apart. This is shedding what no longer fits. You either let life frame you, or you frame life. Frame is built in silence, proven through action. A man doesn't build frame by talking. He builds it by holding the line. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't engage with every challenge. He knows. The loudest man in the room often has the weakest frame. But the one who stays composed, who makes eye contact, says little, and keeps building, that man carries weight without ever needing to prove it. Reclaiming frame. Step by step. If you've been speaking from weakness, here's how to shift. Catch the reflex to explain. If someone challenges you, pause, breathe, don't react. Replace justification with statements. Stop using weak qualifiers, like, I think, I feel like, honestly. Speak with clean structure, short, clear, final. This is what I'm doing. That's not acceptable. This isn't up for debate. Don't argue with chaos. You don't win by overpowering the noise. You win by stepping outside of it. Frame your own life intentionally. Stop saying, I'm a mess. Start saying, I'm building something most people don't understand. That's the shift, from reaction to creation. From emotional reactivity to internal command. Closing words. Frame isn't just about power, it's about presence, leadership, control. Because if you don't control the frame, the world will hand you one, a weak one, a small one, a frame built on your past, your pain, your failures. But you're not here to live in someone else's definition of you. You're here to build your own. So from this moment forward, speak like a man who sets the frame. Because he who controls the language controls the frame. Chapter 8. Clarity over catharsis. Ranting is easy. Precision is power. You've been told to let it out, to express everything, to get it off your chest, to say what's on your mind, no falter, no restraint. And for a while, that might feel like strength. But here's the truth no one tells you. Expression without clarity isn't healing. It's indulgence. You don't become stronger just by unloading your emotion. You become stronger by maiming it, refining it, and using it. Emotion without direction is a cycle. A man rants, he yells, He vents about his job, his woman, his failures, the world. And what happens? Nothing. He doesn't feel clearer. He doesn't take new action. He just feels empty until the next rant. Because emotion without structure becomes a loop. You feel, you dump, you repeat. Catharsis feels good in the moment, but clarity builds momentum. And the man who chooses clarity doesn't just survive emotion, he leads it. Clarity isn't cold, it's constructive. Some men mistake clarity for emotional numbness. They think being clear means being robotic, being emotionless, being distant. But clarity doesn't erase emotion, it builds around it. Anger, when defined, becomes boundary. Pain, when understood, becomes purpose. Fear, when named, becomes preparation. Emotion is fuel, but without clarity, it burns in every direction. With clarity, it becomes fire under control. That's the difference between a wild man and the focused one. Verbal dumping is not healing. Let's be honest. Most men who vent aren't seeking growth. They're seeking relief. They want to be heard, not corrected, not challenged, just heard. But here's the thing. You weren't built just to feel better. You were built to be better. And there's a moment where a man has to ask himself, do I want comfort or clarity? Because clarity doesn't coddle you. Clarity confronts you. Clarity says, enough noise. Let's cut to the root. Clarity asks the right questions. The man who seeks clarity doesn't just talk about how he feels. He interrogates it. Not emotionally, but surgically. He asks, what exactly am I feeling? Why now? What story am I telling myself? What truth am I avoiding? What action am I resisting? This is how you stop spiraling. This is how you break the loop. Emotion becomes insight. Insight becomes action. Action becomes transformation. Emotional leaking makes you weak. You might not notice it at first, but the man who leaks emotion constantly over-explains, over-apologizes, overshares to earn sympathy, talks in circles instead of moving with clarity. And every time he does it, he drains himself.
What would this odd, in-person talk with you?
He might feel seen, but he isn't leading himself. That's not strength, that's stagnation. And stagnation, over time, becomes decay. Training yourself to speak with clarity. Here's how to start. Slow down before you speak. When you feel triggered, ask, what do I actually need to say here? Not how much can I say, but what matters. Cut vague emotional words. Avoid. I feel like, kinda, maybe. It's just frustrating. Instead, I feel pressure because I haven't acted. I'm angry because I didn't set a boundary. I'm disappointed in how I showed up. Build internal language first. Don't speak out loud before your mind is clear. Journal, write it down. Name the exact thought. Stay calm under expression. Powerful men express emotion, but they never let it command the room. There's a man who vents and stays the same. And there's a man who sharpens. Sharpening doesn't mean you suppress. It means you contain. It means you refine. It means you step back, look at your emotion, and say, I see you, I feel you, but I speak from clarity, not chaos. Because there's no glory in emotional dumping. There's no strength in being raw all the time. What's strong is a man who can hold fire in his chest and still speak with calm, clear direction. Don't confuse release for resolution. Catharsis will make you feel like something changed, but change doesn't come from how you feel. Change comes from what you see and what you decide. Because anyone can explode, anyone can vent, anyone can talk. But the man who speaks from alignment, from stillness, from precise inner command, that man builds, that man leads, that man walks into the storm and speaks like stone. So remember, ranting is easy, precision is power. Chapter 9. Read, rewrite, rewire. What you feed your language, you feed your mind. You want to change your life? Start with your words. You want to change your words? Start with your inputs. Because no man speaks with clarity while feeding his mind garbage. You can't scroll through noise, binge distractions, talk like everyone else, and expect to sound like a builder, a leader, a man with depth. Language is not just speech. It's structure. And what you read, hear, and repeat builds that structure or breaks it. Your inputs are your identity. Most men don't think twice about what they consume. They scroll all day. They watch mindless content. They speak in slogans. They quote podcasts but can't think for themselves. And they wonder why their inner world feels scattered. But here's the truth. You are not just what you eat. You are what you read, what you reap, what you repeat when no one's around. Every piece of language you absorb builds the blueprint of how you think. Language is the code of the mind. Think of your mind like an operating system. Every book, every sentence, every conversation, it all becomes part of the code. Weak code equals mental fog. Strong code equals mental discipline. If you speak in cliches, you'll think in cliches. And you'll live in circles. If you feed your mind with real structure, you'll build structure. And it starts with being ruthless about your inputs. Cut the noise. Feed the mind. Before you can rewire, you have to clear space. Cut the entertainment that gives you nothing. Cut the content that keeps you passive. Cut the conversations that go nowhere. You don't need more motivation. You need better language. Read things that sharpen you. Write things that clarify you. Speak words that build you. No fluff. No self-help lingo. Just raw, clear material that feeds your edge. Because every word you absorb either makes you stronger or makes you softer. There is no neutral. Writing. The most underrated tool for mental dominance. You want to rewire your thoughts? Write them down. Not for the world, for yourself. Most men walk around with vague thoughts and emotional loops because they've never seen their mind on paper. But the act of writing does something rare. It forces clarity. It doesn't matter if it's messy. It doesn't matter if it's dark. It doesn't matter if no one ever sees it. You write to understand, to dissect, to separate truth from noise. And, over time, you stop reacting from emotion and start responding from awareness. Repeat to rewire. The man you become is not just built by what you read and write once. It's built by what you repeat. Because the brain doesn't obey truth, it obeys repetition. If you keep feeding yourself stories of failure, powerlessness, and distraction, don't be surprised when those become your default reactions. But if you repeat, I speak from clarity, I write before I react, I don't leak language, I use it with discipline. Then slowly, the fog clears. The mind calms, and new patterns emerge. This isn't theory, this is rewiring. The man who studies himself controls himself. Books are not just information, they are mirrors. They are weapons. They are blueprints. When you read deliberately, you don't just learn, you reshape your definitions. You challenge what you believed. You confront your patterns. You choose new scripts and burn the old ones. But only if you apply what you read. Only if you write to clarify. Repeat to rewire. You're not stuck. You're underskilled. Most men think they're stuck because they're broken. But in truth, they're just underskilled in language. They never trained the muscle. They never examined their thoughts. They never realized how weak their inner script had become. But now you do. And now it's time to build it different. But the right and the left is not the right phrase to increase the word inside your heart. But the stone is the most weak, powerful, creative. Not by hype, not by fantasy, by deliberate rewiring. Input, output. Reinforcement, like a craftsman with his tools, like a soldier with his weapon. Precise, repetitive, intentional. Closing words. You want to rebuild your life? Rebuild your identity? Control your mind? Start here. Read what sharpens. Write what matters. Repeat what builds you. Cut the noise. Delete the weak code. Stop borrowing other people's language. Forge your own. Because clarity doesn't come by accident. Discipline doesn't arrive through emotion. It is written into you. Through structure. Through effort. Through repetition. Read. Rewrite. Rewire. And speak like the man you're becoming. Chapter 10. Don't speak everything you feel. Not every feeling deserves a voice. There's a lie being sold to men today, that speaking every emotion is strength, but putting your feelings on display is healing. That if you don't let it out, it will destroy you. But here's the truth. Not every feeling deserves a voice. Not every emotion deserves a microphone. And not everything you feel needs to be spoken. Some things need to be understood. Some things need to be examined. And some things need to be contained. Expression is not mastery. You've been told that if you speak your emotions, you're being honest. That expressing them raw, unfiltered, is the path to strength. But most men aren't expressing. They're leaking. They're dumping pain instead of processing it. They're venting fear instead of facing it. They're turning every emotion into a performance instead of a lesson. And here's what no one tells them. Expression without discipline is emotional weakness. It may feel good, but it doesn't make you stronger. Emotions are signals, not commands. You feel something. Strong, heavy, overwhelming, anger, shame, panic, doubt. And the impulse says, speak it, let it out. Say something, but pause. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true, and it sure as hell doesn't mean it needs to be spoken out loud. Emotion is a signal. It's information. It's a checkmate light, not the steering wheel. And if you speak every signal without reflection, you become reactive, unstable, unanchored. A man who's constantly broadcasting his emotions is not leading them. He's being led by them. Restraint is a form of strength. A grounded man doesn't suppress emotion. He contains it. He holds the line when it rises. He speaks with calm, not chaos. Because he knows, saying everything you feel is not honesty. It's emotional surrender. And while the world tells men to open up more, the wise man knows, you speak when it's sharpened. You express when it's disciplined. Otherwise, you hold. Not because you're cold, but because you've trained. The urge to speak is often just the urge to escape. Why do most men overshare? Why do they rush to say something when they feel discomfort? Because silence is hard. Because containment is foreign. Because they mistake the urge to speak for the need to solve. But here's the truth. Some storms are meant to be observed, not explained. You don't need to speak your way through every moment. You need to sit with it. You need to wrestle it silently. You need to own it internally before you ever put it into the world. Otherwise, you're not sharing strength, you're projecting weakness. Trained men choose what to speak and when. A man who is grounded chooses his words. He doesn't say, I'm so angry right now. I feel like this is all falling apart. I don't know what to do. I just had to say something. He pauses. He lets the emotion rise, and then he filters it through structure. He says, I'm noticing pressure. I'm going to hold. And frustrated, but I'll speak when I've cooled. This doesn't feel good, but it's not bigger than me. That's not suppression. That's command. Because power isn't found in emotional release. Power is found in emotional control. Not everything you feel needs an audience. That's the quiet rule. Some emotions are for you and only you. Write them. Reflect on them. Train in silence. But don't turn every feeling into a podcast. Don't turn every low point into a post. Don't turn every insecurity into a badge. You don't need to be loud to be real. You don't need to be expressive to be honest. What you need is structure. What you need is the ability to carry weight quietly. That's the mark of a man who's built from within. Not all truth needs to be said immediately. Timing matters. Even when what you feel is true, that doesn't mean it's ready. Sometimes, the truth needs to sit, to marinate, to mature in the dark before it's spoken into the light. You can feel it, you can name it, but don't rush to release it, because once you speak it, you give it shape. You give it weight. You give it power, whether it's helpful or not. A trained man doesn't just speak truth. He speaks it when it sharpens others and himself. The 3 filters. Before you speak, run your emotion through this. Is it true? Not emotional. Not exaggerated. Just true. Is it useful? Will speaking this move me forward or keep me in a spiral? Is it time? Do I need to speak it now or hold it until I've processed it fully? If it fails the test, hold it. If it passes, speak it clearly, without apology, without leakage, without chaos. Closing words. You've been told to speak your truth, and that's fine, but not every truth is ready. Not every truth is helpful. Not every truth should be spoken just because you feel it. The man who becomes powerful is not the man who says the most. He's the one who speaks with clarity and knows when to be quiet. So hold when you must. Speak when you're clear. And never confuse chaos for strength, because not every feeling deserves a voice, and not every moment needs your mouth. Train in silence, speak from structure, and build like a man who's done explaining himself. Chapter 11. Command presence with fewer words. He speaks less, but every word lands. You don't need to speak a lot to be powerful. You don't need to dominate the room to command it. In fact, the most respected men speak the least. But when they do speak, you feel it. Because presence doesn't come from how much you say. It comes from what you carry when you say it. Presence is built in silence. Before you ever open your mouth, the room already knows who you are. By your posture, by your stillness, by your control. Weak men fill the air with nervous noise. They explain too much. They joke too much. They try to sound strong and end up sounding insecure. But a grounded man, he doesn't talk to fill space. He doesn't speak to perform. He waits. He watches. He speaks when the moment requires it, not when his ego does. And that's what makes his presence land heavy, even in silence. Less words equals more impact. Words lose value when they're used carelessly. The more you talk, the less people hear. But when you've trained yourself to be selective, when you've learned to cut the fluff and speak with clarity and weight, every sentence becomes a blade. Catharsis. He speaks less, but when he speaks, it means something. People lean in, people listen, people remember, because his words carry energy, not from volume, but from discipline. Don't perform, transmit. There's a difference between talking and transmitting. Talking is about sound. Transmitting is about impact. You say less, but you radiate more. Why? Because when your words come from stillness, from training, from alignment, they cut through the noise. You're not performing, you're transmitting a message that's already written into your bones. The man who thinks deeply speaks brightly. A man who knows what he believes doesn't need 5 paragraphs to explain it. A man who's clear on his values doesn't justify them. A man who's built in silence doesn't need to shout when he enters the room. He speaks like a builder, short, measured, exact. He doesn't ramble, he lands. And because he's built from within, people feel his presence before he says a word. Debug the fluff. Start here. Cut these from the vocabulary. Honestly, I feel like, does that make sense? I'm just saying, probably. Kind of. To be fair, each one drains the force behind your sentence. Each one makes your speech softer, not sharper. Replace them with nothing. Let your words stand on their own. If they're clear, they don't need permission. If they're grounded, they don't need apology. Speak like a builder. You don't need to talk about everything you're working on. You show it in how you carry yourself, in how you speak, in how little you try to impress. A man who's really building doesn't narrate his process. He doesn't ask for validation. He shows up. He says what's necessary. He exits. Presence isn't built in words. It's revealed through them. So speak like a man who's building something sacred, not selling something shallow. How to build presence through language. Slow down your pace. Let your words breathe. Silence between sentences adds gravity. Stop filling space. Get comfortable with pauses. They don't mean weakness. They signal control. Shorten your sentences. Say it in 5 words instead of 15. Mean what you say. If you don't mean it, don't say it. Let your tone drop. Not forced, just rooted. Calm, low, certain. You're not trying to sound powerful. You are powerful, because you're not leaking language. Say less, be felt more. Presence is not about being the center of attention. It's about being the anchor in the room. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't overcompensate. The one who doesn't need to be loud, because he's already clear. Say less, but make sure every word has direction. Speak calmly, but make sure your tone says, I've already decided. Don't seek attention. Command respect by being intentional. Closing words, you don't need to speak more to be heard. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood. You don't need to fill the silence to prove you belong. Presence is not a performance. It's a decision. A decision to be precise. To speak from the core, not the chaos. To let every word build something real, or stay quiet. So let others rant. Let others seek attention. You speak less. You carry more. You build in silence. You land when it matters. Because presence isn't in the noise. It's in the weight of your words and the power of your restraint. Chapter 12. Rewrite your past with language. You can't change what happened, but you can change what it means. Your past happened. The betrayal, the failure, the mistake, the wound. You can't erase it. You can't go back and make it different. But here's what no one told you. You don't have to relive it the same way forever. Because the story you tell yourself about the past is not the past. It's just language, and language can be rewritten. Memory isn't a fact, it's a frame. What happened, happened. But how you carry it, that's a frame. That's a choice. That's language. 2 men can live through the same moment. One builds from it, the other breaks from it. Why? Because one man said, that ruined me, and the other said, that revealed me. Same event, different story, different identity. Your brain stores experience in language. And if the language is weak, so is your grip on the present. Cut the old narrative. Somewhere along the way you picked up lines like, I always mess things up. I wasn't enough for her. I can't trust anyone anymore. I should have known better. Unbroken because of that. These are not truths. They are scripts. Unquestioned, repeated, reinforced. But now, you don't repeat them. You replace them. That starts with asking, what am I still telling myself about that moment that no longer serves me? Not to lie, not to sugarcoat it, but to own the frame. Trauma becomes transformation through language. Most men think healing comes from time. It doesn't. Healing comes from definition. Until you redefine what happened, you're still living inside it. You're still that boy who was abandoned. You're still that man who got cheated on. You're still that failure from 5 years ago, but you're not. You just haven't rewritten the language yet. Start here. That didn't break me. It exposed what needed to be rebuilt. That loss wasn't punishment. It was the price of clarity. That version of me died there. A better one rose from it. Not performance. Not ego. Reconstruction. Don't let pain write your script. When emotion writes your past, it sounds like this. It was all my fault. I should have never trusted them. I was never enough. That's why I keep messing up now. But when clarity rewrites it, I didn't have the tools then. I do now. I trusted too quickly. Lesson received. Standard set. I lost something, but I found something stronger. That failure was feedback. Now I move sharper. You're not changing the facts. You're changing your relationship to them. You're not erasing history. You're reclaiming authority over it. Your story builds your standard. The language you use to explain your past shapes your future. If you keep calling yourself a screw-up, you'll act like one. If you keep saying that ruined me, you'll live like you're ruined. But when you say, that moment raised my standard, that woman taught me how to never lower my guard again, that failure was the start of discipline, now your past becomes foundation, not dead weight. You stand on it, you build from it. You honor it, not by talking about it endlessly, but by becoming better because of it. Write the new script. Repeat it until it lands. Don't just think this. Write it. Not for the world, for you. Write how it used to sound in your head. Then cross it out and write the new one. Be surgical. Be specific. Say, I am not that man anymore. I see the lesson now. I carry it like armor. That pain built me. That failure redirected me. That loss refined me. And repeat it. Again and again. Until your nervous system believes it. This isn't delusion. This is rewiring your identity through language. The past ends when the story changes. Here's the real reason most men stay stuck. They live in a past they haven't redefined. They wake up every day, telling the same story they told 5 years ago. The same labels, the same blame, the same guilt. But today, you speak differently. You're not a victim of your past. You're the author of its meaning. And that authority changes everything. Closing words. You don't get to rewrite the facts. But you do get to rewrite what they mean. You don't have to repeat a script that weakens you. You don't have to keep speaking like that man who got stuck. You can speak as the man who rose, as the man who learned, as the man who sharpened in the fire and came back, quieter, stronger, colder, clearer. You're not denying the pain. You're directing it. And from this point forward, the story you tell will serve your strength. Because you can't change what happened, but you can change what it means. Chapter 13. Set boundaries with clarity. Strong boundaries start with strong language. A man without boundaries isn't generous, he's exposed. He says yes when he should say no. He tolerates what breaks him. He explains what should be non-negotiable. And over time, he wonders why he's angry, why he feels used, why no one respects him. Here's why. He never spoke his lines with clarity. Because boundaries don't exist until you name them, until you stand behind them, until you speak them without apology. The line you don't set will be crossed. The world doesn't care what you prefer. It responds to what you protect. You don't get boundaries by hoping. You get boundaries by declaring, "What this is my line. This is what I allow. This is what I will walk away from, no matter who you are." Soft language creates soft lines, and soft lines don't hold under pressure. If it's not spoken, it's not real. You think people know your limits. You think they should have known better. You think your energy will speak for you. It won't. Silence is permission. Vagueness is approval. Passive speech guarantees violation. If you don't say it clearly, don't act shocked when it gets crossed. Don't complain that she pushed you. Don't get bitter when friends use you. Don't spiral when people walk all over you. You taught them it was okay by never saying it wasn't. Boundaries are not walls. They're doors. Setting boundaries isn't about isolation. It's not about being closed. It's not about controlling. It's not about controlling others. It's about clarity. A boundary says, if you want access, here's how. If you want trust, earn it. If you break the standard, you lose the privilege. It's a door, not a wall. But it has to be clear. And it has to lock when needed. Because a boundary you don't enforce isn't a boundary at all. Boundaries build self-respect. A man who doesn't set boundaries doesn't respect himself. He may call it patience. He may call it kindness. He may call it choosing peace. But deep down, he's bitter, resentful, disconnected. Why? Because he's betrayed himself by staying silent, by letting things slide, by swallowing what should have been said. And nothing makes a man weak faster than betraying his own standard. You want to feel strong? Draw the line. Say it out loud. Enforce it. Walk away when it's crossed. Every time you do, your spine straightens, your clarity sharpens, your energy stops leaking. Speak boundaries like law, not suggestion. Weak boundaries sound like this. I'd prefer if you didn't. It kind of bothers me when I just feel like maybe. Honestly, I don't love that. Sorry, but I need space. No, you're not asking. You're setting terms. Strong boundaries sound like this. That's not something I allow. Don't speak to me that way. If this happens again, I'm done. I've made my standard clear. I don't repeat it. Respect is a requirement, not a request. Not angry, not loud. Final. Clarity prevents resentment. Every unclear boundary becomes future resentment. Every time you let it slide, you teach them how to mistreat you. You invite future pain. You trade short-term comfort for long-term bitterness. But the man who speaks clearly, who stands by what he says, doesn't build resentment. He builds structure. He may lose people. He may be misunderstood. But what he gains is self-respect. And that's non-negotiable. Decide your boundaries before they're tested. If you don't define your boundaries before the heat, you'll fold during it. So get clear now. What's acceptable? What's not? What's your response when the line is crossed? Write it. Speak it. Burn it into your nervous system. So when the test comes, you don't stutter. You don't explain. You act. That's not cruelty. That's discipline. Boundaries don't need to be loud, just consistent. You don't need to yell. You don't need to shame. You don't need to make dramatic speeches. You just need to hold the line. Again, and again, and again. Without apology. Without hesitation. Without emotional leakage. Consistency makes it real. Repetition makes it respected. Clarity makes it undeniable. Closing words. You don't need to be aggressive to be firm. You don't need to be cold to be clear. You don't need to explain your lines to people who refuse to live by them. Strong boundaries don't make you mean. They make you unshakable. Because a man without boundaries will always live on edge, angry at others, ashamed of himself. But the man who speaks his line, holds his standard, and walks away when necessary, that man doesn't chase peace. He enforces it. So speak your boundaries like law, not performance, not emotion, structure. Because strong boundaries start with strong language. Chapter 14. Cut the inner critic's script. That voice in your head isn't you. Not yet. Every man has a voice in his head. Not the one he uses to speak, the one he listens to when the room is quiet. And for most men, that voice doesn't lead. It shames. It whispers doubts. It repeats failure. It tells him what he's not. And worst of all, he believes it. But here's the truth. That voice isn't you. It's an old script. and it's time to cut it. The inner critic isn't born, it's built. You weren't born with self-hate. You weren't born with shame. You weren't born with that quiet, cutting voice that tells you you're not enough. It came later, piece by piece, from the parent who only saw your mistakes, from the coach who said you weren't tough enough, from the woman who left you and made you question your worth, from your own failures, stacked on each other like bricks around your mind. And slowly, that voice became yours. Not because it was true, but because it was repeated. Repetition builds identity, even if it's false. Your nervous system doesn't care what's true. It cares what's familiar. And if you've repeated the same judgment for years, I always mess this up. I'm not that kind of man. I'll never be enough. This is just how I am. Then don't be surprised when your thoughts, habits, and actions follow it. Because the inner critic isn't just background noise, it's a script. And it becomes your identity, unless you cut it. Name the script, then kill it. You can't fight what you don't recognize, so listen carefully. What does your inner voice say when you fail, lose control, feel insecure, get rejected? Is it subtle shame? Is it self-pity? Is it blame masked as truth? Write it down. See it on paper. Look it in the eye. Because once you name it, you can say the words that matter most. This script ends here. Cutting the script isn't a feeling. It's a decision. You don't wait for the inner critic to go quiet. It never will. Not on its own. You cut it. Daily. Deliberately. Like pulling weeds from the mind. You speak against it, even when you don't feel strong. When the voice says, you always fall back, you say, that was the past. This action is new. When the voice says, you're faking it, you say, I'm training. And training doesn't look perfect. When it says, you're not like those other men, you say, exactly, I build differently. The inner critic doesn't die. It gets replaced. You can't delete that voice completely, but you can replace it. With clarity, with discipline, with a stronger voice. A voice that speaks like this. That may have been true once. Not anymore. I don't collapse. I course correct. Pressure sharpens me. Failure is information. I adapt. I don't speak from wounds. I speak from wisdom. You build this voice the same way the critic was built. One repetition at a time. Not hype. Not fake confidence. Calm, quiet, exact statements that reinforce who you're becoming. The voice becomes the man. Eventually, you stop just hearing that voice. You become it. Because once you consistently speak like the man you want to be, you start thinking like him. And once you think like him, you start moving like him. You walk different. You sit different. You face challenges different. Because your mind is no longer a battlefield. It's a command post. But if you don't replace it, the old one rules. You make no mistake. If you don't choose your inner voice, the old one will return. The critic, the shame, the emotional debris you never cleaned up. It doesn't ask permission. It sneaks in when you're tired, alone, and doubting yourself. So don't just hope it changes. Build the voice that cuts it off. Build the voice that tells the truth, not the emotion. Build the voice that sounds like a man who's done playing weak. Train the voice daily. Speak out loud. Journal it. Repeat it internally. Make it a ritual. Morning. Today I move with clarity. Conflict. I respond with calm, not chaos. Setback. This isn't failure, it's feedback. Isolation. Silence is where I sharpen. It won't feel natural at first. That's the point. You're not repeating what feels true. You're reinforcing what must become true. Closing words. That voice in your head, the one that doubts you, mocks you, softens you, it isn't you. It was installed. But now, You get to choose. Cut the script, replace it with strength. Speak like a builder, think like a leader, move like a man who knows who he is. Because your greatest enemy was never out there, it was in here. And from this day forward, that voice doesn't get to write your story anymore. Chapter 15. Speak your standards. If you don't say what you stand for, don't be surprised when no one respects it. Standards aren't goals. They're not wishes. They're not things you silently hope people notice. Standards are spoken, clearly, calmly, without apology. And until a man speaks his standards, he's not building anything. He's just reacting. You don't get the life you want by being easy to get along with. You get it by setting the terms and stating them like law. Standards exist only when they're spoken. A man will say he has boundaries, but he's never told anyone what they are. He'll say he has values, but no one around him knows what they sound like. He'll say he has discipline, but when it's tested, he shrinks into silence. And then he wonders why people walk over him, why no one takes him seriously. Here's why. Unspoken standards are invisible, and invisible standards get violated. If you don't speak it, you'll compromise it. When you stay quiet about your values, you don't look noble, you look uncertain. And when people feel your uncertainty, they'll test you. Not always maliciously, but habitually. They'll push your time. They'll disrespect your effort. They'll laugh off your seriousness. They'll expect you to bend because you never said you wouldn't. Clarity is not rude. It's respect for yourself. Speak what matters, and say it like a man who's already decided. Standards aren't requested. They're not a preference. It's not a line. And when someone crosses it, you don't explain. You don't repeat. You enforce. If you say, "I don't tolerate disrespect," and then let it slide when it shows up, you didn't have a standard. You had a suggestion. But when you say it once, clearly, firmly, without emotion, and back it up with action, that's when people learn. Speak from structure, not emotion. You don't need to yell. You don't need to give long speeches. You don't need to make them understand. You just need to state your line. I don't explain my priorities. That tone doesn't work with me. I don't chase attention. I value peace. This is how I move. If that's too much, I understand. No drama, no defense, no energy wasted. Standards aren't emotional, they're structural. You're not speaking to be liked, you're speaking to lead. If you don't speak it early, you'll pay for it later. The longer you wait to state your standards, the harder it becomes. Why? Because the longer you tolerate something, the more people assume it's okay. You teach people how to treat you. And silence teaches compliance. If you let her walk over your values, she will. If you let friends disrespect your time, they will. If you let coworkers blur your work-life line, they will. But when you speak with clarity, from day one, you prevent conflict before it begins. Your words align your world. When your words align with your standards, your life begins to harden. You waste less time. You stop trying to be everything to everyone. You start attracting people who respect the man you've become. Because most people aren't rejecting your standards, they just don't know what they are. So speak them. Not as rules for others, but as non-negotiables for yourself. Standards make you lonely, then respected. There's a cost to speaking your standards. Some people will fall away. Some won't understand. Some will say you've changed. Good. Because you're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be respected by the right ones. And respect starts with how you speak your truth before it's tested. Decide, define, declare. Start now. Decide your standard. What do you no longer tolerate from yourself or others? Define it in exact language. Not vague, not emotional. Clean. Declare it when needed, not to get a reaction, but to protect alignment. You don't need to declare it everywhere, but you must speak it where it matters, because what stays in your head won't shape your life. Closing words. If you want to be respected, speak your standards. If you want to stop bending under pressure, speak your standards. If you want to move with clarity, calm, and control, speak your standards. Say what you stand for. Say it early. Say it without apology. Because the man who keeps his values to himself will live under someone else's. But the man who speaks like a builder builds a life that cannot be moved. So let them know. This is my line. This is how I move. And I don't speak for permission. I speak for alignment. Chapter 16. Learn the language of discipline. Discipline has a tone. Calm, cold, final. Discipline isn't loud. It doesn't yell. It doesn't beg you to follow it. Discipline speaks in short commands, quiet tone, zero emotion. And most men can't hear it, because their internal language is still soft, still emotional, still fragile. If you want to build discipline, you must learn its language. Discipline is not a feeling, it's a script. You don't feel like being disciplined. That's not how this works. You become disciplined when you install the right commands. Short, repetitive, ruthless. Do it anyway. Not now, it's time. That's enough. We're not negotiating. You don't wait for motivation. You don't ask for inspiration. You run the code, like a soldier follows an order. Because discipline doesn't ask how you feel, it tells you what to do, and expects obedience. The untrained man speaks like a child. Listen closely to the undisciplined man's language. I just don't feel like it today. I've been good lately. I deserve a break. I'll start again tomorrow. It's probably not that big a deal. One more time won't hurt. These aren't random excuses. They're scripts, programmed lines that weaken the system. And every time you say them, you make it harder to follow through the next time. Until eventually, you forget what command even feels like. Discipline begins with replacement language. You don't beat laziness with guilt. You beat it with new commands. You replace just this once with irrelevant, move. You replace just this once with that's how the spiral starts. You replace it's been a hard day with that's why we don't fold now. This isn't motivation. It's reprogramming. You speak the words of a man who follows through, even when it's boring, painful, inconvenient. And over time, your body obeys.
Jerry Sander, Calmud, the black world of people.
Names. Discipline has no hype, only presence. Discipline doesn't shout. It doesn't need a playlist. It doesn't need energy drinks. It doesn't need one more reel. It walks in, says start, and expects compliance. If your internal voice needs music, mood, or movement to activate, you're still performing. The real switch happens when your internal tone gets cold, calm, sharp, direct. You said 6 a.m. You said 30 days. You said no excuses. No emotion, no inspiration, just structure. Self-respect is built through commands obeyed. Every time you obey the command you gave yourself, you add a brick to your identity. Every time you delay, make an excuse, or check how you feel, you chip away at that structure. And most men wonder why they can't trust themselves, why they never finish. The answer is simple. They don't speak like leaders. They speak like victims of their own mind. But the disciplined man, he says, I do what I say, especially when it's hard, especially when no one's watching. That's how self-respect is built, through a voice that says, get up, and a body that moves before the second thought kicks in. In the same cruel, undue world, with meeting crash, lay against man, the state will be the human being. This is what everyone puts it. Here's how you start. Create 3 commands. Your internal script for pressure moments. Move anyway. We don't skip. Finish what you started. Use the same tone every time. Don't get dramatic. Don't yell. Speak like it's final. Say it, then move. No debate. No journaling. No emotional warm-up. Repeat until it becomes automatic. Repetition builds identity. Every command obeyed rewires you. Closing words. Discipline is not hype. It's not motivation. It's not a feeling that visits you when conditions are perfect. Discipline is language, spoken with finality, repeated with consistency, backed by action. You want to become unstoppable? Then speak like a man who obeys himself. Let others talk about potential. Let others journal about vision. You speak cold commands. You keep them short. You back them with movement. Because discipline has a tone. Calm, cold, final. Chapter 17. Speak to build, not impress. You're not here to be interesting. You're here to be solid. Most at even the life itself with touch that fails. They want to sound clever. They want to impress. So they talk too much. They perform. And in trying to sound strong, they reveal how weak they actually are. Because a grounded man doesn't speak to be admired. He speaks to build. Himself, his world, his standard. Nothing more. Speaking to impress is a form of insecurity. When your words are designed to get a reaction, you've already lost. Because now you're performing. Now you're shaping your voice to match what you think others will like. Now you're not building anything solid. You're selling an image. And eventually, the mask cracks. The script runs dry. The truth shows. A man who speaks to impress always feels pressure to keep performing. A man who speaks to build feels peace. Because he's aligned. Builders speak from purpose, not approval. Here's the difference. The performer says, "How can I say this so they'll like me? How do I sound smart right now? What will get the best reaction?" The builder says, "What's useful right now? What's the truth, without extra words? What will move this conversation towards structure?" He doesn't worry about being interesting. He worries about being exact. Because his identity doesn't come from how others react. It comes from how disciplined his speech has become. Clean language builds strong foundations. Words are bricks. Every sentence you speak lays another layer in your world. So if you speak with fluff, exaggeration, or performance, you're building on sand. But when your words are clear, calm, and grounded, you're building with stone. That means cutting these. Like, you know what I mean? Honestly, I'm just trying to say, it's kind of like, I guess, sorry, but here's what I think. These are not humble, they are weak. Cut them. And speak with presence. Like this, here's what I see. I don't agree. Here's why. Let's move forward with this. Direct, solid, complete. Real power doesn't need to be interesting. You don't need to be entertaining to be strong. You don't need to be charismatic to be grounded. You don't need to impress anyone. You need to build your voice like a tool, not a spotlight. Your goal isn't to say things people like. Your goal is to say things that last. Words that create order. Words that reveal standards. Words that reinforce who you are when no one's watching. The performer always fades. The builder endures. Performers rise quickly and fall faster because they chase reactions, and reactions shift. But a builder, he doesn't rise fast. He rises quietly. Because everything he says adds weight. He's not concerned with viral. He's concerned with valuable. He's not trying to win the moment. He's speaking like a man who plans to be here for decades. Speak to structure, not signal. Don't signal values. Build them with your words. Don't say you're disciplined. Speak like it. Don't say you value time. Show it in how you speak. Don't say you're grounded. Let your tone prove it. Every word either adds weight to your character or takes it away. So speak like a craftsman. Cut the unnecessary. Sharpen the structure. And never, ever perform for approval. Use this 3-step speech check before you speak. Ask, is this useful? Or am I just filling space? Is this solid? Or am I hedging, softening, or exaggerating? Is this for building or for performing? If it fails the test, don't say it. If it passes, speak it with full presence. No fluff, no flair, just foundation. Closing words. You're not here to impress. You're not here to sound clever. You're not here to be admired for your voice. You're here to build a life that can't be moved. And that starts with speaking like a man who's building it, not selling it. So stop chasing reactions. Stop curving your tone for applause. Stop trying to be liked. Speak less. Speak clearer. Speak as a man who's already done the work and doesn't need validation to finish the job. Because the man who speaks to build may not get applause, but he earns respect that echoes. Chapter 18. The Man Who Builds Quietly. He doesn't shout, he builds. And when he's done, there's nothing left to prove. The loudest man in the room isn't the strongest, he's the most uncertain. The man who needs to be seen, heard, praised, liked, is still searching, still seeking approval, still performing. But the man who's already decided who he is, he doesn't talk about it. He builds. In silence. In hours nobody sees. And when the time comes to reveal what he's built, there's no need to explain. Silent building is sacred. You don't need to broadcast the process. You don't need to share every step. You don't need to prove that you're working. Real work is done in the dark, when the noise fades, when the eyes are gone, when no one's clapping. That's when the real builders sharpen their tools. That's when the foundation is poured. That's when identity is forged. Not in public, not in performance, but in private, quiet, focused discipline. Less talk, more structure. Most men talk about what they're going to do. I'm getting back in shape. I'm fixing my habits. I'm cutting off distractions. I'm building something big. But the man who's really doing it, he doesn't say much. He doesn't need to, because his results, not his words, speak for him. You want to move different? Stop talking. Start stacking bricks. One clean rep, one clear boundary, one finished task. Day by day, quietly, without performance. Quiet building creates permanent power. Noise gets attention. Silence builds momentum. The quiet man doesn't peak early. He compounds. He doesn't need validation. He trusts his system. He doesn't collapse under judgment because he wasn't building for approval. And when he steps out, he's solid, unshaken, tested, because the work was done where no one could touch it, where no voice could distract him, where no weakness could hide behind hype. The need to be seen is a trap. The moment you start building for others, you dilute your edge. You start rushing the process. You start adjusting your values. You start relying on applause instead of structure. And slowly, the work becomes performance. The mission becomes a show. But the man who builds quietly doesn't need anyone to know what he's doing. He doesn't need likes, shares, comments, support, attention. His reward is the work. His clarity is internal. His identity isn't up for debate. Silence is the multiplier. Every hour you spend in quiet discipline, it multiplies. You may not see it yet. You may feel like nothing's changing. But brick by brick, it stacks. Until one day, the body reflects the hours. The tone reflects the discipline. The life reflects the code. And when that day comes, you won't need to say a word. The man you've become will do the talking. Make this your code. Speak less. No need to narrate your goals. Build daily, with no announcement, no performance. Trust the silence. It's not empty, it's focused. Move for yourself, not for praise, not for proof, for presence. You're not here to prove you're working. You're here to become a man who works when no one's watching. Closing words. He doesn't shout. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't need permission or attention. He sharpens in silence. He builds without audience. He transforms without applause. And when he walks back into the room, he's heavier, quieter, clear, unshakable. Because the man who builds quietly doesn't need to convince anyone. He is the proof. Outro. You made it to the end, not because it was easy, but because you were ready. Ready to stop talking like a victim. Ready to start speaking like a builder. Every word you choose from this point forward is a tool. Use it with clarity. Use it with control. Use it to rebuild your mind. This is Darkwood Audiobooks, for the man who's done making excuses and ready to rebuild.